Welcome back to the Acceptable Casualties. Today we have a 1,750 point game of Shock Rifle Battalion for the Soviets against Fallschirmjagers for the Germans. We're going to be doing a custom mission today. It's going to be based around the Shock Rifle Battalion trying to punch a line through the Fallschirmjagers and destroy the railway to affect German supply lines along the whole front. The rules for the mission are going to be the infantry squads for the Soviets have to get in base contact with the railway, and on a skill test, they're able to place a satchel charge. The next turn, if no enemy unit is within 4 inches of them, they're able to try to set the charge off with a successful skill check again, and that will end the game effectively. For the Fallschirmjäger, they have to defend the railway line, and they only have delayed reserves as one of their rules. So what's going to happen for that is the Fallschirmjäger will have half their platoons on the table, and then starting turn 3, they'll be able to roll for reserves. But the only way they're going to get their reserves in is if they control this hut here, which is their communications and HQ for the area. So they're going to have at least one infantry base in there to call in their reserves. If there's nobody inside the hut, then reserves cannot come in for that turn until they retake the hut. We're going to do random rolls for that as well on a 1, 2, or 3. The reserve unit will come in from the road on the north. On a 4, 5, and 6, they're going to come in from the south. So we're going to be back in a second. We'll go over the lists, and then after that, we'll do deployment. So first up, we have our 1,750 points of Soviet Shock Rifle Battalion. Down here, we have the 1IC, 2IC, and Battalion Commissar. Over here, we have a submachine gun Udarny company, and then we have 2 Udarny rifle companies as well. Each one has a flamethrower, Maxim heavy machine gun, Commissar, and 2 anti-tank rifles. In the back, we have a light mortar platoon with observer. Here we have 5 OT-34, the flame tanks, and then we also have 3 ISU 152s for digging out those Jaegers on those objectives. So this is 1,750 points of Shock Rifle Battalion for the Soviets, and we'll be right back to do the Fallschirmjäger. So here's our 1,750 points of Fallschirmjägers. Starting down here, we have the 1IC, 2IC, and a Panzerschreck team. We have a Fallschirm Pioneer platoon with 2 MG42 combat attachments, the supply truck, and 3 barbed wires that they took for free. Down here we have 2 Fallschirmjäger platoons, just the 6-man, so 2 squads, and then they have an MG42 combat attached on each of those. We have 3 Stugs here for support. They're going to be here. They're not going to be Fallschirmjägers. Same as the 3 Nebelwerfers here with 1 observer. Then we have 4 Pack 40s. We have 4 heavy mortars with 2 observers. And then we have the small platoon of the LG 40s. They're going to have 4 of these platoons off the table. They'll be coming in on turn 3 if Vin's dice end up working out for them. So we'll be back in a second to go over deployment and start the game. So we are back for the end of deployment. This is going to be a good one, I think. All right, so we'll do the German deployment first. They took 1 platoon of the Fallschirm Pioneers with the 2 MG42s and the barbed wire, and they pretty much just fortified around this pond right here all the way up along the road, and they placed the 1IC inside the communications hub. Behind them in support, they have the 4 Pack 40s lined up along the fence line with their commander back here in the forest to give them support fire just in case any tanks push up on that flank. Next to them, they have the 3 Nebelwerfers with their commander sitting right there, and their observers. They have 1 here in this forest. And Vin, where'd you put that other observer?
I have 1.
Oh, you only have 1, okay. And then back here is another squad of just regular Fallschirmjägers with their MG42 pressed up against the train tracks, waiting to hold off that assault, the inevitable assault of the shock troops that they're facing down across the field on this side. So this is the Russian line as a whole, 1,750 points. Starting down here, we have our mortar team with their commander in the woods, and the observer's getting ready to push his way up to the top of that hill. Next to them, they have the SMG shot company, the ISU 152s. Then we have both of our regular shock rifle battalions in support of the flame tanks. Most likely we're going to be just pushing up the table. Maybe we'll try to wheel into this over here, but I think it's just going to be a hornet's nest. So we'll have to see how many casualties we take walking up this road before we make a decision of either trying to take this or push past it and go right for the train tracks. So stick around. We'll be back in a second for the top of Soviet Turn 1. So we are back for the top of Soviets Turn 1. This round, we just went at the double with that Shock Rifle Battalion. This one, we ended up just going one move because if we would have went at the double, we would have been right in the range of that MG42 over here for the Pioneers. We went at the double and hide behind the hill with those flame tanks. The ISU 152s are just pushing up the road slowly, hopefully to get in a range and start punching those Pioneers in a turn or two. The SMG Shock Battalion, they just ran up the hill and supported those tanks. Observer ran to the top, and the mortars ended up staying still. For shooting phase, we weren't really able to shoot anything except for the mortars. So we were able to range in on a 6 on our first roll down here. Didn't get any wounds off. Vin made 2 of his saves, but we were able to pin these guys. So I don't think it's really going to do much because he has the one I see in the hut here. So they'll probably get unpinned next turn and then maybe start to open up a little bit. That's pretty much all that happened here for Soviets top 1. So now we're going to roll into the bottom of Fallschirmjager 1. So we are back here for the bottom of Fallschirmjager turn 1. Obviously, nobody moved. Everybody stayed dug in. Onto the shooting phase. Well, actually, I'm sorry. One person did move. They tried to sneak the Shrek up over here. I don't know what Vin has planned, but hopefully I can just cook that guy next turn with those flamethrowers. As far as shooting goes, the MG42 right here ended up opening up his 6 shots into the SMG battalion over there, and he had 3 hits, but I was able to make the 3 saves. The Nebelwerfers, they opened up a rocket barrage down here onto the mortars, and they were able to range in, but I was able to make my 1 save on the 1 hit that they did get, but they did pin down the unit. So that's all we had here for the bottom of turn 1 for the Jaegers. So we'll be back in a flash to see how the Soviets held up. So we are back for Soviets top of turn 2. We had a pretty good turn. We started to get a little aggressive on this side. The infantry on that flank over there with the 1 IC battalion commissar, that battalion ended up pushing up at the double, take a little cover behind the forest right there. This one right here and the SMGs behind them, they just, they went at the double. They just moved up their regular 6 inches, waiting to make their move after the tanks did their thing. The 152s, they were able to fire 3 shots needing 6s, and I ended up getting 2 of them, so we were able to pluck out 2 of the Pioneers from their foxholes over here. And then we rolled up the flame tanks, and we had a whole bunch of hits with their skill tests. We were able to burn out one of the MG42s, just another Pioneer, and that Shrek team that jumped over the barbed wire. And then we failed to hit the Nebelwerfer Observer. The last thing we had going for us was down here. The mortars fired back into this Pioneer platoon as well. We got 1 hit, but Vin made a save, so we ended up just getting these guys pinned, which they were pinned already because of the flamers. So that's pretty much all that happened here at the bottom of turn 2 for the Soviets. So we'll be back in a second for bottom 2 for the Fallschirmjager. So we are back for the bottom of turn 2 Fallschirmjager. Not that bad of a turn for the Green Devils. So everybody pretty much stayed put over here. They were able to unpin the Pioneer unit. They turned those Pack 40s and they just smoked this flame tank section here. They had all the gasoline tanks, ended up blowing up 3 of them, and then the remaining 2 decided that things were getting a little too heated over here, so they're going to turn around and go back home to Moscow. The Nebelwerfers decided to drop a smoke bombardment here in front of the ISU 152s, so we're going to have to move next turn, and the Pioneers went to ground, so that's going to be another turn wasted of not shooting. That's pretty much everything that happened for the Pioneers, so we'll be back in a second for the top of Soviet turn 3. So we are here for top of turn 3 for the Soviets. due to a rules mishap, this turn could have went a lot worse for Vin, but it ended up working back in his favor. So we'll just go over the movement first. We ended up marching up here with the mortars 6 inches. We moved up with the ISU 152s to get in the close range with those Pioneers. We went at the double with the SMG squad. So kind of try to tempt Vin maybe to drop a mortar from the Nebelwerfers in there instead of the smoke. We'll see how that goes. We moved up with this rifle platoon right here, and we moved up with the other shot platoon on that side. With all of our shooting, we only actually killed the observer down here with some rifle fire. We were able to dig him out. Then I thought Vin's Nebelwerfers were only confident trained, but they ended up being veterans. So in the shooting phase, I had what I thought was I needed 6s. I ended up rolling 2 6s, and I dug out 2 of his Nebelwerfers. But when we looked back at the army list, they ended up being veterans, which would have made it 7s for me to hit. So we put them back on the table and played it the right way. Should have kept my mouth shut and just cheated. but we didn't do it that way. So we'll be back in a second for bottom of Fallschirmjagers turn 3. Hopefully for their sake, they can get at least maybe 1 reserve on here and start holding the line a little bit better because the Soviets are starting to make a push toward that railway. So we'll be back in a second. So we are back for bottom of Fallschirmjager turn 3. Not a bad turn for these guys. Not the best, though. They didn't get any reserves in on this one. Nobody moved. The Pioneer squad here stayed on the ground, and they were just banking on support from those Pack 40s. Vin fired off 8 shots, 4 hit, and he ended up getting 1 bail down here on this far tank. And then the Nebelwerfers decided to drop a rocket barrage instead of doing their smoke, and they were able to bail the commander on here, and then they took out 2 bases and pinned some of the SMG guys. That's all the shooting and pretty much anything that happened on the bottom of 3. So we'll be back in a second for top of turn 4 and hopefully a Soviet assault over here on these Pioneers. We'll see how things play out. So we are back for Soviets top of turn 4. Things went pretty good on this one. We ended up pushing up and trying to get these 2 guys to be united front between the 2 battalions right there. The SMGs, we tried to push up and take apart the to break down the barbed wire, but we passed the first skill check. But when we had to confirm it on the second roll, we ended up failing it. So we have the whole SMG platoon kind of sitting there against the barbed wire. Hopefully next turn we can get a push through there. ISU 152 stayed put, and then the mortar team, they stayed put as well, but we didn't dig in. We ended up not wanting to cut our volley fire in half. So we fired 11 shots, those mortars, into the Pioneer team over here, and we missed on every single one of them. So that didn't work out too well. On the other side of the table, we had the Maxim heavy machine gun was, I thought he was in range, but he actually wasn't in range. So we fired off 6 dice, and it really didn't matter because I needed 7s, not 6s. Down here, the 152s with volley fire, we had 4 shots with the rerolls, and we were able to get 3 6s. So we erased 3 of those Pioneers. So all that's left here is the 1 IC, the sergeant for the group, and then the machine gun. And Vin ended up passing his motivation to stay on the table. So that's all that happened here for the top of turn 4 for the Soviets. We'll be back in a second to see how the Fallschirmjagers did in the bottom 4. So we are back for bottom 4 Fallschirmjagers, and this was actually a really good turn for these guys. For movement phase, they ended up pulling back the MG42 to try to maybe get another round or 2 of fire out of them. Movement-wise, nobody else really did anything, and Vin didn't get any reserves again this turn. For shooting phase, the 42 opened up and was able to take out, I think, one of the SMG bases. The Pack 40s over here, they just opened up, and I had some horrible dice on my saves, and I ended up missing 1 with, what was it? I missed 4 saves, yeah. So Vin was able to blow up 2 of them and bail out the last remaining ISU 152, but we passed our motivation, so we're still in it. We lost a couple guys from the SMG team as well. Up over here, the rifle team up here and their MG42 opened up on that top Shock Rifle Battalion, and they took out 3 guys. So right now, Still looking like we're in pretty good shape for this assault and this push. Vin's reserves not coming in have really kind of helped us out, I think, a little bit more than I expected. But we're going to need to capitalize in the next turn or two, I think, before guys just start coming in automatically. So we'll be back in a second for top of turn 5 for the Soviets. So we are back for top turn 5 for the Soviets, and yeah, this was our magic turn right here. This is where I think we ended up making our mark. So for movement, we weren't able to unpin the SMG Udarni squad, but we were able to get the IS 152 back into the tank. We pushed up a little bit further with the mortars, and then with both of the rifle platoons over here, we continue to push up, try to get to that fence line. For the shooting phase, both of these rifle battalions shot into the Fallschirmjagers over there. We were able to kill off one base and pin that unit. And then we fired a couple shots from that side of the battalion over there into the Pack 40s, but weren't able to really do anything with that. The mortars down here were able to fire just a couple solid shot rounds into that MG42 that was sitting there. We ended up getting 4 hits, and he wasn't able to make that many 5-up saves, so we ended up peeling him out. Right here was the big guy, though. He had his 2 shots with the reroll for volley fire, and he just shredded that building. He had 2 misses, I think, on his first roll, and then his second roll, he ended up getting success, and that was enough to just wipe out the guy that was in there. So Vin has a decision to make coming up here in the bottom of turn 5. Does he push some of those Pack 40s or maybe their commander ahead and try to get into there to radio in for reserves, or does he just hold the line with what he has left and see if he can beat back the Soviet horde? Because remember, the reserves don't come in unless Vin's inside that building raiding those guys in. So we'll be back for bottom of turn 5. See if Vin got any heroics up his sleeve. So we are back for the bottom of Fallschirmjager turn 5. Not a bad turn. You did what you had to do. So for the movement phase, the Pack 40s and their commander ended up moving up on the road over here. Everybody else stayed put and just kind of opened up. So the Nebelwerfers, they dropped their bombardment down here, and they were able to kill a couple bases out of there and pin the unit. The Fallschirmjagers up here, they had 16 shots thrown into these guys. They hit on 11 of them, and I think I made 10 out of the 11 saves. The only one I failed on was one of the anti-tank rifle squads, which I needed a 5 to save on. So that was pretty awesome for me. Sorry, Vin. Not that sorry. And, and then down here, the Pack 40s, they opened up down here, and they were able to bail out this ISU 152 again. So hopefully he can jump back in the tank and pop that guy out of the building here, because the commander for the Pack 40s was able to get his stormtrooper move off and get into the building. So if he survives next turn, Vin can at least get 1 reserve on the table and then roll for a couple more. So we'll be back in a second for the top of turn 6 Soviets. So we are back for top of turn 6 for the Soviets, and this turn went pretty solid. So on this side, we were able to push up, shoot, and assault with both of these, and we were able to take out the Pack 40s over here and do some damage over there with our flamethrower and just some volley fire and everything else. And we were able to push back the Jaegers there, so we were able to get some hard cover along that rail line and the concealment for the wooden fence right there. Hopefully next turn we'll be able to get that bomb planted. Down here, we were able to take down the 1 barbed wire, and with the rest of the squad, we were able just to kind of work around the edges if there were gaps in some of the barbed wire and work our way toward the house over here. The 152 ended up staying put, as well as the mortars. The mortars fired, and they pinned what was left of the Pack 40s over here. And the 152 fired into the house that Vin was able to move into, but we missed both shots. Like I said, during the assault phase, these guys took out those Pack 40s and did a little bit of damage to the Fallschirmjagers, and the other rifle company was able to just move up off that consolidation and then assaulting the empty foxholes. The downside for Vin was the Pack 40s ended up failing their morale, so whoever was left ended up running off the table, and that included their sergeant who was left inside the house. So at this point in the game, Vin pretty much just conceded because, there's no way to take the house back. There's no way for him to get reserves. And I don't think he's going to be able to really even make a counter push and do anything against that line over there. That's going to take the railway. So the Shock Rifle Battalion did their job. They punched through the line, able to take the railway, and behind them is the whole Soviet horde making their way to Berlin. So we'll be back in a second. We'll go over the Endgame recap and go over our strategies and how this game played out. So be back in 1 sec. So we're back here for the end of the game recap. I think overall the scenario was pretty good. It was pretty balanced. It was just Vin missing on those first two reserve roles and not getting any assistance, and then by then IS 152s, they were able to kind of line up and just put work in and take care of that house. But as far as the Soviets go, I mean, my plan pretty much worked out how I wanted it to, besides the flame tanks. But yeah, the whole idea of having those two rifle battalions, the shock battalions, kind of push up over here. The one I had in the middle, I was kind of given it an option to see how things went on this side. If things weren't going to go well and I wasn't going to be able to punch through, I was going to use that shock rifle battalion to kind of wheel in and go this way, while the other one just pushed up and made a play at the top of that rail line. So that was the plan that I had with the two rifle battalions. Down here with the flame tanks, it was unfortunate they got shot off the table that fast, but yeah, I was going to use them just to try to punch a hole in here into these pioneers with those flamethrowers, make life a little bit easier for the SMG teams to kind of possibly breach those barbed wire and get into the assault, and then just take control of the house with support of the ISU 152s. So that was the assault plan, to take the radio communications and also try to put a little bit of pressure on the top part of that table. For the mortars, my plan was just to gradually just push up, and if we got in the late game, try to maybe set these guys up around here just so I can give support mortar fire and just keep guys pinned down, maybe coming in from reserves on the south side over here, and help support my infantry as they try to blow up the railway over there. But, we didn't need to get them that far up the table. I think overall the plan worked pretty well. Most of the units did pretty good. My dice for the 152s on the defensive end, I mean, they were getting popped and bailed out like every round. So, just having one left on the table made a huge difference. But I think if the dice went a little bit better for me, I probably would have been able to keep like 2 or 3 on and maybe push up a little bit further with these guys. But I don't know. As far as the Germans, from my end, like looking at it, like me and Ben talked about it for a little bit. The Pioneer setup here, I think this is perfect. As far as putting the barbed wire out, and then having those Pioneers dug in to kind of hold off those tanks from pushing just straight up the middle of the table, and being able to defend that building. And the Pac 40 support along the fence line, I think, was really good. Vin talked me into his theory on having the Nebelwerfers on the table. It made sense. I might have put a third Fallschirmjager platoon on there just to have some more infantry to kind of support this objective over here, so we can keep getting those reserves in. And I talked about maybe taking that rifle platoon over there and maybe moving them up and more toward mid-table so they can give covering fire along that opening gap over there against the shock rifle when they came through, and then up the road and also help support this if they ended up losing the house. But that's, what my thinking was. But Vin, you can, what were you thinking as far as how you had your defense set up?
Defensively, like my main plan was to just kind of thin you out, like to kind of keep everything like in just like one line instead of like keeping you all bulked up. Which, looking back, probably would have been better to have you bulked up, considering I had 2 units.
Oh, if you got the heavy mortars would have came on, yeah.
If they would have came on, it probably would have been better to keep you.
Yeah, just keep barraging with the bombardments.
But the original plan was to have my Pioneers wait for an opportunity to charge them with the tanks, and then put everybody else in a crossfire. Because the second they were done, I was going to actually push you offensively.
If your reserves
actually
came in, yeah. Not having them come in, not having them come in turn 3 and 4. That was backbreaking. I mean, you got to think, up until turn 5, you had a pretty legitimate chance of getting those guys on the table and and making a counter push. But when those first two opportunities fell through, I mean, it's just a matter of time before those 152s are gonna blow the walls in and take out whatever inside that house.
But going back and talking about what we were earlier with the Pioneers, them on the Pac 40s, and the Nebelwerfers. I think thinking on it, actually, I think you did have a good point when we were talking off camera about having that second Fallschirmjager unit on there, and just kind of holding off for the Neville Warfers to come in. Granted, the smoke worked really good against the IS.
Yeah. The smoke paid off, but like I said, you just didn't have. I don't think you had enough infantry to support and take back the house. Like the house was pretty critical. It wasn't the main objective, but it's pretty critical for your defense. But I think that's all we're gonna do for the end game recap. I think we kind of pretty much covered anything. It was a fun game, pretty good scenario, pretty balanced. I just think those 152s and the bad reserve dice kind of swung it over in the Soviets' favor. Maybe we'll make a couple changes to this and maybe try to play something similar to this down the road. But like I said, it was fun for me. I don't know if it was as fun for you because
just the dice.
Yeah, because the dice were not kind. But we'll be back. We'll do it again in a couple days. Get this posted up for you guys to enjoy. Leave some comments down there what you guys thought about. If you guys want to see more scenario games, or you guys just want to stick to the stuff out of the book. So thanks for watching, and give a like or subscribe.